New this morning, as the DOJ prepares to release more documents related to the Jeffrey Epstein investigation, the department is facing intense criticism over the slow pace of the rollout and the heavy redaction in the initial batch of files. The DOJ says it erred on the side of, quote, over redaction to protect victims of Epstein. Yesterday, the Justice Department republished a photo taken from Epstein's home that featured an image of President Trump. It was deleted Saturday, but reappeared Sunday, with the DOJ saying it temporarily removed the picture to make sure it didn't show any victims. The heavy redactions and drip of the documents release has angered the bipartisan lawmakers behind the Epstein files legislation. They're now threatening contempt proceedings against Attorney General Pam Bondi. Listen.
The quickest way, and I think most expeditious way to get justice for these victims is to bring inherent contempt against Pam Bondi.
We're building a bipartisan coalition, and it would fine Pam Bondi for every day that she's not releasing these documents.
Joining me now, CNN legal analyst and criminal defense attorney Joey Jackson. We heard Republican Congressman Thomas Massie, who is also behind pushing this forward, say that the letter of the law and the spirit of the law has been broken, something that many Democrats agree with. What's the recourse here, as you started to see there, what they're going to potentially, what they could do, but they have to have bipartisan support, obviously.
Yes, they must. So, Sarah, good morning to you. What happens is generally the recourse, the remedy, when you're not complying with the law, is in the law itself. The unfortunate thing here is that there is no provision in this law that gives a specific remedy. And so what they have to do, that is Congress, is look for ways in which they could bring enforcement. The law is very clear. The law indicates you have records, communications, you have documents that are to be released. It's called the Transparency Act. It's called that because it really envisions the information coming out to the public. It also says you have 30 days to do so. It also says, Sarah, that after those 30 days, 15 days later, you're to report to Congress with respect to the redactions, the categories of them, why you redacted them, what was the purpose, etc. So what you're looking for is compliance. So what I believe, and they've been floating this, you heard there, either contempt proceedings, impeachment proceedings, but something to bring teeth to the notion that what we said to do in the law, which, by the way, it passed in the House less one vote, right? I mean, there was only one person that didn't vote for it, and unanimous in the Senate. So this is something that the public is screaming for.
Yeah, I want to talk about the 15 or so files that were taken down a day after they were posted, which included a photograph of President Trump, Melania, Epstein, and Ghislaine Maxwell. Here's what the DOJ said the reasoning was for pulling down those images. It says, out of an abundance of caution, the Department of Justice temporarily removed the image for further review. After the review, it was determined there was no evidence that any Epstein victims were depicted in the photograph, and it has been reposted without any alteration or redaction. I mean, when you look at this sort of push and pull, it's like they put it out, they take it back, they put it out. What does this tell you about the process they are using to deal with an enormous amount, to be fair, an enormous amount of files and documents?
Yeah, I think there's a concern amongst the public about whether there is a cover-up or whether this is being done in good faith, whether you have Clinton's name mentioned so many times. It's not about politics and who should be mentioned, who shouldn't. It's about complete accountability. The law speaks to who are the government officials and others who were named and who were not. And when you look at this, Sarah, I think it's important very briefly to look at the timeline. Everyone's Clinton, Clinton, Clinton. The reality is that Epstein, the public investigation, began in 2005, right? Clinton served 92 to 2000, and then you look at him actually being accountable in Florida, if you could call it accountability, in 2009. Some believe that he escaped justice in a very significant way, and then, of course, 2019 is ultimately when he was indicted, died a year later. And so I think that if you're going to release it, for law's sake, release it so there are not conspiracy theories. And if you're going to redact it, of course you want to redact sensitive victim information. Of course, classified should not be there. It says it in the law itself. But everything else, really, if it's not child pornography, etc., should just be given to the public and let the people decide. And when it comes out in a disjointed way, when it looks like you're preserving and protecting people, I think those are when conspiracy theories abound, and perhaps they should.
Yeah, there were a lot of talk about, the pictures of Clinton, Bill Clinton, and then you had this one picture that showed Trump, which, by the way, people had seen before, that was taken out. It does ramp up those folks that believe a conspiracy or a cover-up is happening. And we will see what happens going forward. There are many, many more files that still must be released. And I know we'll have you back. Joey Jackson.
Looking forward.
Do appreciate you.
Joining us now is the top Democrat on the House Judiciary Committee, Congressman Jamie Raskin. Congressman, thank you so much for being with us this morning. It's great to see you. Is this a cover-up?
Well, sure. I mean, if you read the statute, the only things they're allowed to be redacting are related to child sex abuse, physical abuse, ongoing investigations, which they say there are none, and national security. So how can you block out an entire document? It makes no sense. And remember, Trump opposed the legislation up until the very end when he could read the writing on the wall. Then he said, oh, I'm for it. They've decided they're just going to try to obstruct the implementation of the legislation. So that's the fight that we're in now.
Do you think the 30-day time frame for release of these documents was realistic?
Well, yeah, given that they came to us back in July and said they'd been through all the documents and they couldn't find any basis for bringing any other lawsuits, they'd already scrutinized them.
What of this do you think falls into the category of protecting victims, and what falls into the category of cover-up? Because obviously there is a very strong interest in making sure the victims are protected.
Yeah, I'd say probably 0 and 100. They've not shown any deference or respect for the victims at all, for the survivors of this nightmare. And it's all about covering up things that, for whatever reason, Donald Trump doesn't want to go public, either about himself, other members of his family, friends, Jeffrey Epstein, or just the social, business, cultural network that he was involved in for at least a decade, if not longer.
So do you think this actions that the Department of Justice are taking on this are specifically designed to protect Donald Trump?
What else? I mean, that's their whole business model. In fact, they're trying to reorganize American constitutional jurisprudence and the rule of law around the idea that the entire executive branch serves one guy. That's the unitary executive theory, that this is all about serving whatever Donald Trump wants. So yeah, I can't imagine what other interests they have in mind.
One of the things we did see were a number of pictures of former President Bill Clinton with Jeffrey Epstein, with Ghislaine Maxwell in a jacuzzi, swimming in a pool. How do you explain that connection, and are you comfortable with it?
I mean, I have no idea. This is why we want to get to the bottom of it and get all of the facts out to, to the public. I mean, that's what this is about. And, look, there are clearly lots of people that are in photographs with Jeffrey Epstein, and in addition to being a child sex predator and an international child sex abuse trafficker, he was very much of a socialite and a sycophant and a panderer to different people. So there's lots of people who've appeared in those contexts, and we shouldn't be covering up for anybody if they were actually involved in criminality. And otherwise, it's embarrassing to people, but the Congress has said we don't want the suppression of materials simply because somebody may be embarrassed. I mean, Bill Clinton has appeared along with Donald Trump, along with Noam Chomsky, and other people from different aspects of our society. But what we're looking at is, how did a global, decades-long, billion-dollar sex ring go undetected and unpoliced for such a long period of time? This is about a double system of justice. Remember, he was convicted back in 2008, but that didn't stop him from going forward and continuing to run the whole network.
I mean, Republicans would probably sit here and say, well, why didn't you do this when Joe Biden was president of the United States, when you had the power?
Well, if they ask me personally, I can produce for you, as I've produced for them, a number of letters I wrote, including a hearing I did as a subcommittee chair on the Oversight Committee about Alex Acosta and the double system of government that we saw back in Florida. Remember, there was a 60-count federal indictment ready to go on this international child sex trafficking ring, with all kinds of counts, including the money laundering, the conspiracy, the prostitution, and so on. And Alex Acosta cast the whole thing overboard and came back with one state count of solicitation in Florida to benefit Epstein and his friends. And there was really a cover-up of other people who were involved as part of that plea bargain agreement. And I've got the letters to show how I was demanding hearings on that back in 2018, 2019. So that's just phony. In any event, accusing somebody else of hypocrisy doesn't demonstrate that you're actually interested in getting to the bottom of the crime. And that's what we need to be doing here.
Are you planning to sue the Justice Department to release the rest of these files?
It's not clear that we've got standing to do that. Speaker Johnson would clearly have standing to do that on behalf of the whole House of Representatives. The court rules about standing of individual members or the minority caucus are very restrictive and hostile. So we're going to be doing whatever we can to elevate this, to keep it in the public imagination, and to demand that they turn the documents over. But if it's possible, we will be bringing litigation, but we're trying to work that through right now.